has remained throughout the years is sort of this disinvestment in the community. That architecturally there have been changes, but what's remained is there's sort of a social disruption that still is inherent within Avondale. So my idea is also in 3 phases, as is Lane's, but the 3 phases come within the investment in the community that then can be seen through how through physically how this area is developed within the community and community engagement. So first, in a neighborhood business district, I wanted to make sure that this was not all new construction, that there is a building there that could be reworked, but it's just not working right now as it is. So this is a picture of the existing commercial big box retail sort of that's there now, that's completely underutilized. And then this is what's being saved from that. And then in the red is well, right here, I guess you can see it better, is where some new anchors would be there, like a food co-op to show the community investment in the area, and then also some not necessarily retail, but probably some small food commercial type stuff. But primarily the main focus of the first phase is this area right in here, which is illustrated more here and here, in that there's these small walls, plug-in walls sort of, that can give the community members quick access, kind of as a rental space to those large storage pods. Readapted, could be plugged in and used as a small pizza shop or a dry cleaner or something, that these service walls then can provide something, and then through the growth in this area, you can then see how the community is doing and how it's getting invested in this area. So then through that, the other phases can then be developed. That's basically the main idea that I have. And then there's also some more affordable housing that comes along, making this area, which would be right in here, to make this area a little more walkable and community centered.
And over here we have the transit-oriented development, or Avondale Platz, kind of reminiscent of Potsdam Platz in Berlin. Right here we have the current light rail alignment for the region, and we're concentrated on the blue line, this I-71 corridor, which connects Mason downtown and the international airport. And prior to this project, I did a research study on a stretch of our corridor, looking at the best potential locations for a light rail stop, and using a number of variables and doing some factor analysis, I decided that BMOK was one of the best, and actually the best place for a transit stop based on current trips that could be generated and future trips that could be generated. So that, based with the current area as is, most of this is underutilized, vacant, abandoned industrial lands, which are really disconnected from freeway access because they have to use residential surface streets, and you don't want semis, freights moving through residential areas. So that being a brownfield, we thought this was a perfect area with the light rail access to become a transit-oriented development. And for Todd, some of the principles are access to transit, and more not just access, but maximizing that access. And to do so, you can use urban design, site planning, how you mass buildings, or what type of buildings, land use wise. So with those principles in mind, I kind of came up with some concept diagrams, really making this a multimodal center, having the light rail access, tying this into our streetcar alignment, our bus routes, pedestrian oriented, making the streets grid with some diagrams, with some diagonals, and then tying this into a bike route which connects the east side of the town with the uptown area, because a lot of people bike in to campus or to the medical centers. And then using land use, having the most concentrated on commercial and retail closest to the transit center, and transitioning this into a residential type, lower density, and this will help flatten it into the existing community, which is more lower density residential. And then again, with this idea of climax and radiation, on the periphery of the site, they're kind of more lower density, less intense uses, but as you get closer to the hub, buildings start to get larger, more interesting, there's more activity on the street, and then as you get to this transit hub, this center of this exchange and movement of different types of transit, of ideas of people, you have these huge buildings around you in this open space and this very interesting transit center. And you can kind of see that with more low-rising residential, and then it gets more dense and more intense. And then you have the transit hub as the buildings kind of frame the area. And some of the use typology in the buildings that are going to be those spaces have programmable open spaces. It's pretty much going to be concrete, so you can walk on it, but there'll be trees, there'll be landscape, but it will take advantage of all the people which are walking through the area, all the activity, all the excitement. Mid and higher rise buildings, no single family, you have to really take advantage of getting close to this transit. All parking is going to be at the periphery of the site. It's going to be decked and it's going to be wrapped. And this area will really take advantage of being in proximity to the medical campuses. It's going to be a place for them to expand as the years go on, and providing spaces that can take on their uses. And then a medical market, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it kind of takes on what convention centers do, but for medical uses, because they're over maybe weeks and months, and you can't have a setup at a major convention center in the city, because there needs to be other conventions going on. So this allows them to stay there longer and showing off all the technologies. And this will feed off, being close to the transit center, people coming from the airport and other parts of the town, and feeding off of the medical campus that's already here.
Okay, and then our final portion of this is looking at the availability of fresh produce in the area. After our discussions with the actual community representatives and just our overall knowledge of the site, we saw that there aren't actually any grocery stores in Avondale, which is an issue. It makes getting fresh produce a lot more difficult than it should be. So what I did here was I broke it down into kind of like 3 phases. One, locating where underutilized space in the neighborhood is, and then what the feasibility of implementation and upkeep, and then finally any programming that could go into, if we were to make this more accessible, which fresh produce more accessible, which we decided that, through urban gardens, this was definitely a solution that they could do this. So, looking at underutilized space, I kind of broke it down into 3 areas of vacancies, institutions, and then green space. And for the most part, just branching off of our additional framework, we tried to stay away from the southern portion of the area, just because in order for this to be a successful endeavor, it has to be nearby where the residents actually are. So from there, I automatically focused more northern. So what I saw through the clusters of these different breakdowns was that by going along with our cultural and civic site that we pulled out, that I felt that it had the best chance for success. So to break down the site, it's also pulled out over there. It's right below Forest on Rockdale, pulling together the schools and then where the new Pride Center would be. So the 2 schools, the Pride Center, and then there's currently a big park right there with ball fields and everything. And then the reasoning for doing this was, obviously, you need, with any urban garden, you need people who are going to be there to maintain and operate the site. So these different institutions are going to be the people who are going to, help drive this forward along with the different residents. So as far as implementation and upkeep, the Community Garden Association, they kind of broke down creating an urban garden into different phases. Forming a planning committee, choosing a site, preparing and developing, and then organizing it. And without these 4 things, I felt through general trends of research that gardens aren't going to be successful. And what kind of goes into each one is you have to make sure that the goals are the same for the community. You can't want one person just say, oh, I want a pretty place where I can go and hang out and relax and everything. You have to, without these clear-cut goals, a garden's not going to be successful. So you have to figure out what type of garden. You have to have committees who are going to take care of the tasks. And then choosing the site, obviously we had our site area. I pulled out the main locations where there was the most potential for a garden going in there itself, which is here, the 2 gardens, the ball field, and then the surrounding space around the Pride Center.